Here today to look at building a better future and the role of engineering in society in the spending review. We've got a lot of awfully smart people with us to talk a little bit more about that. But I'm going to start with a couple of parish notices. Through the magic of technology, you can submit questions for the Q&A at in the box in the top right hand of your screen, and please do tweet along using the CPC 2020 hashtags. So we've got in the spending review that's coming up a set of priorities on strengthening the UK's economic recovery from COVID-19 by prioritising jobs and skills, levelling up economic opportunity across the country by investing in infrastructure, innovation and people, and maximising productivity, and making the UK a scientific superpower, including leading in the development of technologies that will support the government's ambition to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050. So skills, net zero, innovation, infrastructure, not hard to see where engineering could come into play here. And luckily, we have a brilliant panel of speakers to enlighten us further. Gillian Keegan, the Minister for Apprenticeships and Skills, Amanda Solloway, the Minister for Science, Research and Innovation, Yewande Akinola, a Fellow of the Institution of Engineering and Technology, Professor Jim Hall, a Fellow of the Institution of Civil Engineers. So there's a lot of people with a lot of very long job titles here, so I'm going to take a deep breath in the middle. Dr. Hilary Levers, the Chief Executive of Engineering UK, and Professor Jeremy Watson, Professor of Engineering Systems at UCL and member of the Royal Academy of Engineering. Gillian, I know you have to leave early, so I'm going to start with you. Could you just run us through what you see as being the role of engineering as it relates to apprenticeships and skills in the spending review?
I mean, obviously, engineering and construction is absolutely vital. It touches every part of our lives, homes, offices, everything we do. I think for a long time, we've all been calling for more focus on STEM, more focus on engineering in particular. And of course, I don't think you'll find anybody on this panel who doesn't think engineering's vital. We need to focus more on it, and we need to make sure that we have the skills, which is the part that I'm particularly focused on. I think, obviously, before the coronavirus, pretty much every discussion with every sector I had was about the lack of skills in particular sectors, shortage of skills, and how we were going to encourage more people to take the careers choices to basically go into engineering and science, technology in particular. We've done a lot of work at so it's absolutely vital, and I guess we'll all be saying the same. The question is, how do we do that? How do we persuade people that it is a good place to put their time and effort, build their careers? So the first thing is in terms of investment. Obviously, the government's investing heavily as part of our Build Back Better strategy, is really bringing forward quite a lot of construction, engineering and construction projects. And that's really been a focus, and I think you'll be hearing today at the conference from the Prime Minister more about the focus on the green revolution and really using our net carbon target to really galvanise as we build back from coronavirus as well. So where that leaves somebody like me is basically trying to ensure that we have the skills pipeline coming through from school right the way through all of our systems. So, obviously it's a key part of our economy. It's a part of our economy that, whilst impacted by coronavirus, has not been impacted to the point that, it's not going to recover quickly. All of those investments are meant to ensure that we do have a very healthy industry. In terms of what we're doing, I think one of the things I'm very excited about, actually, that we've changed in the way that we work here at the CFE is actually bringing together the businesses and some of the key business in the engineering sector and the ECITB with the Department for Education, and that work's been going on quite a long time. So we now have 137 apprenticeship standards in engineering and manufacturing, and we've had thousands, tens of thousands of people start in the past year on those apprenticeship standards, and that's what we need to make sure we've always got the right standards and the right offer at the apprenticeship level, because I think apprenticeships are a key way of upskilling and getting people skilled in this area. But the other thing we've also been working on is T-levels. T-levels are an alternative to A-levels. We just introduced them this year. And they're really where young people can start their career-led study earlier. They're equivalent to 3 A-levels, but they're really focused on particular industry and industry sector. And within those, we have engineering focus within 7 of those T-levels. There's 24 in total. We've just introduced 3 in September, and we'll be rolling that out. So that's a key part of the trying to develop the pipeline. And where we need to work with the industry more is those T-levels. One of the key differences is young people spend 9 weeks on an industry placement, and we need to work with the sector to make sure that we have those good quality industry placements, which really encourage people to go into the skill set. In terms of the spending review, there has been some announcements recently on our investment in skills, and particularly for adults and those older who may want to retrain or upskill or go into a completely different career path, and to ensure that we are there offering the support and the funding for adults to do that. And there's a whole host of things that we'll be doing and working on in the next months, which are a variety of delivery methods, obviously modular learning, being able to enable more apprenticeships, and also boot camps, which is another great way for people to upskill. And we're looking at those also after digital, which is the first one in construction and engineering. So it is a key part of our focus. I think skills and the recovery plan building around investment in infrastructure will be key vital points, which I think this industry will welcome. But we just need to make sure that we get our act together to make sure that we can take advantage of that and build the skills pipeline, which is so desperately needed.
Thank you. I mean, it's really interesting point about the working together and working with industry. That is something that I know Amanda BEng is prioritising as well. So maybe, Amanda, could you just talk a little bit about what BEng is doing to work with industry to kind of develop that innovation after the pandemic? Well, we can't hear you, Amanda. I think you might be on mute.
Sorry. Thank you. Yes, it's delighted to do that, and great to be here today, and great to be here with Gillian as well, because it's clearly crucial that we work really closely with education. I've been working really closely with Michelle in terms of the universities and R&D as well. So there are lots of things that we are very mindful of. One, actually, let me take a step back. When I first had this role in February, one of the things I really wanted to do very consciously was make sure that we set the foundation for the future. Because I think if you don't have solid foundations, then it's really difficult to make sure that you do build a strong science superpower, which is clearly our drive and focus. So in order to get the foundations, I literally had a sort of session in my office where we got post-it notes and flip chart paper and everything, and came up with what the key themes needed to be in order to build these solid foundations. And out of that, there is the R&D roadmap that we launched in July, and it's really ambitious, and hopefully some of you had the opportunity to read it, and if not, then please do have a look at it, because it's a very user-friendly document. I was very conscious I didn't want 300 or 400 pages of just this is what we'd like to do and never do something. That what I really wanted was it's 50 pages of good solid steers, signposts and questions. But within that, there are some key challenges which I just would just like to mention. One is diversity, people and culture. And that really links into engineering as much as it does to anything in R&D, really, that it's absolutely crucial that at every stage, which is why it's important to work with the Department for Education as well, is that we are encouraging young people, that we're encouraging all ages, we're encouraging all different groups, all diversity, all backgrounds to actually get involved in R&D. And it is a challenge, I have to say, and we haven't done enough about it in the past. And so I'm really keen that we have a culture that enables and supports all people at all levels in R&D, including engineering. Other challenges that clearly we face, and this is all part of the foundation, and then I'm trying to make sure that we achieve all of these, is the levelling up agenda. Really conscious that I come from Derby, as you can probably tell from my accent, and you know, we're a great engineering city, and there's lots of richness that we have in Derby. We've obviously got Rolls-Royce, but we've got Bombardier, working really closely with the University of Derby, but also other surrounding universities, and indeed other educational and units. And it's just really important from my point of view that we work really closely, industry, education, but also just making sure we support people all the way through. And then a couple of other things that Gillian again has touched on is making innovation could not be more important. Absolutely have to be making sure that we are encouraging and allowing innovation and supporting it. The spending review clearly looking at everything that we can within that at the moment, but innovation, I don't think we do enough, and I'm really keen to make sure that we do a lot more, and working with Hayatan, who many of you will be familiar with, in order to make sure that we are achieving that. Climate change, I couldn't sort of do an introduction without mentioning it. The environment is singularly one of the most important things that we really have to tackle. There are lots and lots of things, obviously, but for me, we all have a responsibility to do better in terms of the climate, to do better in terms of the environment, to think about things that we're wasting, to think about all our actions. But I have to say that the way forward, the way we save the planet for my daughters and my granddaughter, who is now 11 months old, is we have to use science and research and development in order to do things like fusion, in order to do things like carbon extraction, all those things that will get our planet back on track. I could go on for a while, but let me just leave it there for the moment.
Thank you. Jeremy, maybe we turn to you about using the science. Can you kind of expand a little bit on where you think the priorities should be kind of now going forwards for engineering?
Thank you very much, colleagues. So briefly, I'm Jeremy Watson. I'm Professor of Engineering Systems at UCL and Chief Scientist and Engineer at BRE, the Building Research Establishment. I was previously a CSA at what is now MHCLG, and I was Research Director at ARUP, so I had broad coverage of some of the topics we're talking about today. And I'm a Fellow and Trustee of the Royal Academy of Engineering, and I suppose importantly for today, a founding chair of the National Engineering Policy Centre, under which terms this report was produced, Engineering a Resilient and Sustainable Future. And I do hope that government colleagues have found it helpful and inspiring. I was previously president of the IET, so I wanted very briefly to just talk about what is the National Engineering Policy Centre. Well, at long last, I guess, and we really celebrate this with our professional engineering institution colleagues, we now have a sort of a collaboration with the Royal Academy of Engineering, a partnership of 43 professional engineering bodies. And we have overall 450,000 members in total, which is a huge body of expertise we can call on. It's led by the RAEng and represents the whole breadth of the engineering profession. And we attempt and have been, through Go Science, through SAGES, giving policymakers a single route to advice from right across the engineering profession. We want to be both proactive and responsive in a very effective way, and we've done that recently on policy issues of national importance and for the benefit of society. And obviously economic recovery is really, really important to us. Within that report, which I commend really highly to you and is really readable, it's quite short and accessible, economic recovery, prioritising jobs and skills, levelling up, investing in infrastructure and innovation are really headlines for that. And under that, there's sort of four main pillars, really: net zero, innovation, education skills, and infrastructure. Absolutely vital. And I would say that the Royal Academy of Engineering has recently articulated its mission around sustainability, sustainable engineering, and really importantly, diversity. And we're taking real action on that, both in our own fellowship, but also externally. Okay, so going down the things I was going to say, engineering is critically important to solve some of the biggest issues the country faces, from developing technology that can fight climate change to improving transport infrastructure. So it's really important for politicians of all parties to understand how to improve our society and strengthen our economy based on good evidence and expert opinion. The coming spending review is one of the most important in a generation. It comes at a time when the UK is in recession, the pandemic has increased inequality, and we face the ongoing threat of climate change. In response to this, the National Engineering Policy Centre, four of whose partners are represented on the panel today, have produced that joint response to the spending review. We want to show jointly and collectively how the government can support a green economic recovery, create jobs, support innovation, and promote green industries. And it's great that the Prime Minister, I believe, is going to be speaking along those lines later. In the response, we set out some priorities for how the UK can achieve net zero emissions by 2050, support education and skills, and make the UK one of the best places in the world for innovation and develop our infrastructure to do that. The government needs to invest in new low carbon technologies, such as low carbon heat, carbon capture and storage, and a personal view I have in energy storage as well, whether it's thermal or electrical. The government needs to support the engineering skills which are necessary for us to build a green recovery and support engineering in the long term, and that's at all levels. It's at professional engineering levels, but it's very important at the apprentice fed streams of technicians, if you like, the doers who actually are on the ground making a difference. And of course, incorporated engineer, Eng Tech, are registrations that can be achieved by those people with the professional engineering institutions. So the government needs to support innovation by increasing spending and encouraging businesses to invest. And I think, again, a personal view, going back to my previous experience, is how to make sticky investments that keep high-value companies in the UK and not sold out overseas. We need to create new low-carbon infrastructure and manufacturing. That's a whole sector that can be developed and can be exported. And by taking these practical actions proposed by the National Engineering Policy Centre, the government can help to create the strong economic recovery from the pandemic, which we all hope for, and I know will happen, while also dealing with some of the long-term problems facing our country. So thank you very much. That's my intervention done.
Thank you. Yewande, we'll come to you next for some introductory remarks and what your perspective is and what's been said so far.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been really good to also hear our previous speakers, and I have to say I'm greatly encouraged as well. I am currently on the board of trustees at the Institution of Engineering and Technology. And for those who don't know, although I'm sure lots of people know, the Institute of Engineering and Technology is pretty much one of the largest engineering institutions in the world, serving a membership of nearly 170,000 and people from lots of different countries. I think our members are pretty much in about 150 different countries of the world. With the Royal Charter, a huge, massive ambition to inspire the next generation of engineers and to serve, current engineers, technologists all over the world, as well as have some of these very, very, very important and crucial conversations with government. I've had the wonderful opportunities of seeing firsthand the need for continued STEM education, especially through some of our programs like, the Faraday Challenge, some of the programs that just really encourage young people to come up with great ideas. And the one thing that is absolutely consistent is we are seeing the uptake of a generation who want to build and shape a better world. The young people I speak to say to me, oh, how can I get into a job stroke career that helps me play a better role in serving the planet and shaping a more sustainable planet for myself, for my grandparents, for children to come. And I think that really should be reflected in the service that government and industry bring to young people. Over the last 2 years, we've worked with our membership and governments as well on issues around safety, on issues around Brexit, on issues around ensuring that the infrastructure in this country is sustainable and is safe for the inhabitants of this country. And what that is exposing is a slight change, a slight modification stroke evolution in skills, in requirements for skills. There's a lot around digitization. There's a lot around artificial intelligence. There's also a lot around ensuring that those core skills in infrastructure are maintained in this country. And that comes to the conversation around diversity. That comes back to the conversation around really ensuring that young people have access to the skills that would ensure that we're able to provide the infrastructure that we need in this country. The other really interesting aspect to this conversation as well is the fact that, you know, when we think about innovation and the history of innovation in this country, innovation is something that we've sold to the rest of the world. You know, we always have that new thinking to bring to the rest of the world. And we're starting to also see a bit of a gap there. You know, other countries are, you know, leveraging technology. Other countries are starting to think of how they can bring new thinking into everyday industries. And what we need to start to do is ensure that we're providing those necessary skills that continue to place us as innovation providers everywhere in the world. The IET sits right at the heart of those conversations, and the theme of shaping a better world. I work in construction, and you know, we are looking for different ways to deliver buildings. So when you talk about, you know, things like modular construction, when we talk about, you know, COVID response programs, which are pretty much centered around being able to deliver buildings with less people on site, innovation, research and development, science and technology sits right at the heart of that. And we need to ensure that, you know, moving forward, we're providing young people and people currently in the industry with the skills to be able to rethink how we deliver innovative projects and infrastructure in this country. I'll pause there for now.
Thank you. That was really, really interesting. Hilary, we're going to come to you next from Engineering UK's perspective.
Hi, so I'm Hilary Lever, CEO of Engineering UK, an organisation supported from across the engineering sector to build the number and diversity of tomorrow's engineers. So I will be picking up on those skills points. And we talked earlier more about actually what those skills will be used for digitization, for net zero. We know for the infrastructure and investment in innovation and building the economy. So it's so important that we have the right number and diversity of skills to deliver against that. And to emphasize, it isn't just a numerical need. We do need that diversity of thought. And this is a diversity that young people naturally bring through their youth, but also through their demographic breadth compared with the current engineering workforce. And we need that to enable us to be more creative, more responsive to societal needs. If we don't have a full representation of society in our workforce, that becomes hard to do, and to be more resilient. And those are all qualities we need now more than ever. So just to really emphasize on the back of Amanda and Yewande's words, the importance of keeping that front of mind, as well as the number of young people coming into engineering and technology. So we don't actually think of it from a more numerical perspective. We've had this really long-standing skill shortage, but it's quite hard to know how that will change and where it will be most evident as we look at the ongoing impacts of the pandemic, we look at the impacts of Brexit, and also layering on top of that all of the government announcements of very welcome investments to be made in this area. So the first thing that we need to really do is establish a strategic workforce planning function across government to develop a deep understanding of those skills needs, and then in hand with that, a STEM education strategy to respond to those needs. And that strategy needs to be drawing not just on the evidence of what is needed, but also the evidence for how we can generate those skills. So there are many initiatives in this area, and it's hard to know which are the ones to prioritize to really address the skills needs. But that education skills strategy will need to rapidly look at how we can address the educational inequalities that the pandemic has widened. It needed to include FE, a really important route into engineering and technology that Gillian talked about and is vital, and some good steps are really being taken in that area, but also needs to address STEM careers education. And some recent research that we published highlighted how young people are anxious about their job security and availability. Those are the roles we want, jobs that are there and that they can keep, but they also do want to have that societal impact. But at the same time as worrying about their futures, less than a quarter of young people said they had had careers advice at this time, which will make it really hard for them to not only feel more secure about their future, but also be able to concentrate and be motivated on the studies that they need to acquire those skills. So we really need to make sure that we've got the careers education, information and guidance to bring people on to the engineering pathways. Finally, we also need to continue to focus on that job creation for young people. We just cannot leave this generation behind, and that means incentivizing employers to take on young apprentices and trainees and other work placement opportunities for young people. And those that can really need to take steps to do more than they can to support their supply chains, the sector and the country as a whole. So there are three things there: strategic workforce planning, an equitable STEM education strategy that will address the needs identified in the workforce planning and includes careers education and support for and delivery of employee placements.
Thank you, Hilary. And last but certainly not least, Jim, will come to you now.
Thanks very much indeed. My name's Jim Hall. I'm Professor of Climate and Environmental Risks in the University of Oxford. I'm also a trustee of the Institution of Engineers and a fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering. It's a great pleasure to be here this morning, and there's been a great deal of synergy and agreement in terms of what we've heard from the various panelists. To try and avoid too much agreement breaking out, let me put down a few challenges here. I think we're all very much on the same agenda, and we've heard many of the same key words. What do I see as being the challenges? And these are very familiar challenges for governments in this country and around the world. One is that everything that we've talked about are agendas for the long term. And so all of what we're talking about with respect to infrastructure, skills, innovation, requires a real degree of determination to keep with and to develop long-term strategic plans of the type, for example, that the National Infrastructure Commission has been doing around infrastructure. We're hoping to see in the government's infrastructure strategy. The other thing which governments sometimes struggle with is joining up, taking the whole systems approach across the different silos of government. And much of what we're talking about requires that. And in particular, I would say around innovation, because innovation is such a complex process and it's so place specific. So we're very creatively about those challenges of joining up. But there are many things I think which are really heading in the right direction. On decarbonisation, I've been delighted with the announcements that we've heard recently, tackling carbon both on the demand side with further action in homes and buildings, and on the supply side with respect to offshore wind. That has got to be followed through with determination. There are many difficult aspects of decarbonisation which are further down the line, as we know. Beyond the power sector, which we must decarbonise, there's all of heating and transport and other aspects of industry which we need a long-term plan for. But I think the good news is that industry is ready. We heard it from Yewande that there are engineers out there who want to make this happen. And I think the signal that is coming from the top of government at the moment is exactly what industry needs, that government is serious about net zero and is prepared to stick with it. The flip side of decarbonisation, of course, is coping with the impacts of climate change, of resilience. Already this month in Oxford, we've had the highest downpour of rain for an October. And COVID has also taught us about the many different sides to resilience and the need to learn from the shocks which we've been encountered, to develop better stress testing, to do exercises to invest in resilience of our society and our economy, because this will not be the last extreme shock that we face. On innovation, yes, Minister, I did study the R&D roadmap with great interest, and I think it's a fantastic document. One thing which degraded slightly was the future tense of becoming a science and technology superpower, because in the universities I've worked in Oxford, Newcastle and Bristol, and in the Royal Academy of Engineering, we think that a lot of what we've been doing for a long time is superpower status. But I take your point about some of the challenges we face in terms of innovation, diversity, and levelling up. But I think if we can pull these things together in that whole systems approach, there is a virtuous circle to be created. So a virtual circle which invests in innovation, connects up, provides the accessibility and the quality services with infrastructure which innovation requires, and does that in appropriate ways around the country. It's the levelling up agenda. So if we can take this systems approach and stick with it in the long term, I think we're on track.
Thank you all so much. Those are really, really interesting introductory statements. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask just a couple of questions from my own perspective, and then we have a whole stream of questions on the Slido to ask. So please do keep putting your questions into that box as well. So firstly, I wanted to start by picking up on a point that several people made, but Yewande, you spoke about it the most, so I'm going to go to you on this, about diversity with people with engineering and technical skills. How do you encourage a diverse workforce and a diverse pipeline in engineering and skills?
Well, that's a $1 million question. I should say a £1 million question. Jokes aside, over the last 10 years, a lot of work has gone into creating a different perspective of STEM careers. So I would say, right until, when I was at university, there was definitely a one side to the story, which was pretty much STEM careers, engineering careers not being for a certain type of people, whether you were from a specific, ethnic background or, of a specific gender type. And to be honest, I remember, there being very, very few girls, women in my classes at university. Now, over the last 10 years, because I feel like, I've been active in that space over the last 10 years. I've seen organizations like Institution of Engineering and Technology, Engineering UK, a lot of the other PEIs, the Royal Academy of Engineering, put incredible effort into programs that show that, you can be an engineer irrespective of who you are and where you are from. The work must continue, because our numbers are pretty much still in single digits. In fact, I think there was an 8%-9% number for women actually going into engineering careers. Now, what really gives me hope is engineering, science, technology, and maths is becoming more dependent on creativity. When you think about the solutions around creating our built environment, how people move from one place to another, how we deliver buildings, how we come up with the next big thing that's going to save lives. It's all about, as Hilary said, that diversity of thought and that ability to think in colors as against black and white. It's about bringing in people's different experiences. It's about connecting the dots with what is happening, in different parts of the world. And so creativity is coming to the heart of it. So that message needs to be clear. STEM careers is about creativity. Now, in terms of investments, nothing progressive has happened without huge investments. Now, investments need to be made into ensuring that there are programs that allow people to see the different and creative sides to STEM careers, as well as ensuring that it aligns to the ambition to shape a better world. Girls are asking, how can I shape a better world? Boys are asking, how can I shape a better world? People from varied backgrounds are saying, I want my world to be better. And that common thread has the incredible ability to bring the diversity that we need in STEM.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they would like to add on that point?
Can I come in on that? So, Jeremy, as past president of the Institution of Engineering and Technology, and I was very proud to do that in 2016-17, one of my 3 mission objectives was to improve diversity. And although it was already underway, and Yewande can probably comment on this as a current trustee of the institution, we now, I think, have in the institution a balance of gender on the trustee board, which is an extraordinary achievement. And actually, we have rules in place for appointment which also takes age into account, so we're not all greying males. And I think that is the direction that so many of our organisations need to follow. So maybe leave space for Yewande to come back to check my accuracy on that point. But the other point that I think really resonates with me is about investment. We constantly ask the government for money, but actually there's also stuff we need to do, I think, to best use that money. And for me, that's about coherence of purpose. We need to come together to get the scale that leads to success. And that's not about us all doing our own individual things. It's about actually recognising common goals. And obviously 2050 is one of them. And bringing organisations together to have more effectiveness for action. Thank you.
Can I add in on top of that, really picking up on that need to be working together more coherently? On behalf of the engineering community, we will next Thursday, be launching tomorrow's Engineers Code, which is all about organisations who are engaging in any sort of engineering activities, outreach activities, to better coordinate and share their learnings for what works, to better evaluate and test themselves as to whether their initiatives are having the impact they want, and also to make commitments about diversity and inclusion. And we already have, I think, over 50 organisations which are making these commitments. We encourage anyone listening to have a look, and we'll be launching next Thursday. But that need to build the evidence base, I think your initial question was, what should we be doing? We've got some ideas, but actually, if we knew exactly how to crack this, we would have done it some time ago. So really investing more in understanding what works for which group of people at which age. And I fear that we are going to have to update the understanding that we already had, because things are moving so fast. And the research that we published this summer shows that. It shows, number one, that the gender disparity in career aspirations in engineering and technology may have grown as a consequence of the pandemic. So the need to take urgent action has increased. But it also showed that young people are putting more weight on job security and availability. And those are messages we wouldn't normally lead in when trying to excite people about engineering. We'd be talking about the breadth and the creativity and the problem solving and the teamwork. But actually the messages that may resonate more now, maybe this is an area of real investment for the government, so there will be jobs and they will be secure.
Thank you. Kind of slightly picking up on that point about jobs, this is a question for Amanda that I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to come in on afterwards. We're expecting a big announcement from the Prime Minister in 45 minutes now on new green investment and new green jobs. But what is the government currently doing to strategically understand the skills gaps in the markets around green jobs and where those can be filled?
Thank you. And just a couple of things on that. First of all, I just wanted to pick up just lastly on the diversity, because it is absolutely crucial. And just picking up on the final words, you know, we need to be brave and we need to act with courage. Rather than, I mean, I agree, we need all the research that sits behind it, but actually we all have a responsibility to make sure that we are driving all of the diversity agenda forward, and not just talking about it, but acting on it. So I think that's really important. There are lots of things clearly that need to be done and should be done. It's a shame that Gillian isn't still here, because clearly that's her field of expertise when she talks about all of the T levels and all of the work opportunities. But from my point of view, it is around it's the whole system. And we've heard a lot of talking about the whole system. So it is about making sure that we give a good, solid and strong education to everybody. We must make sure that we do that. And then following on from that, we need to give choices. And that choice is around whether it's an apprenticeship, whether it's a degree. Personally, I didn't go to university, but just making sure that people do recognise that they have those opportunities. And then the final thing just to pick up really is, and I'm sure the Prime Minister will talk about this as well, is around the levelling up agenda. And it is around making sure that what we're doing is we're affording opportunity throughout the country. And that's around the investment that we do and we put into R&D, but also all sectors. And the challenge at the minute that you'll hear us keep on talking about, and I know everybody acknowledges, is this challenge of making sure that we save lives, but also save the economy. And it doesn't go, it isn't unnoticed, it is something that plays on all of our minds as to exactly how we do this. So we must make sure, in my view, that we work with industry. It's about industry working together. It's about making sure that we give opportunities, use those apprenticeships wisely, making sure that we educate people as well. So massive challenge. I think just to give a note of optimism, I think we do have an opportunity. As you will know, undeniably, there is a large R&D budget. There's 22 billion, which seems like an awful lot of money. Believe me, by the time people have all asked for a bit here and a bit there, it's not quite as much as it seems. And there are a lot of commitments as well. But that just shows the government's investment in terms of taking us forward into the future. And science and technology, it is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I will allow other people to come in on some of the green points in a second, but I just want to come back on that innovation point. Historically, a lot of the research and innovation in the UK is being funded by private money, and there are some points about how competitive the UK is as a private for private investment into innovation. Is that map changing, would you say?
Absolutely. Again, I mean, one of the things that we need to do, I do believe genuinely that we're at the forefront in terms of the things that we're doing. You know, we're chairing COP26 next year, and we need to make sure that we do this. And I say this from my granddaughter's perspective as well. And there's lots of things, as I mentioned, right at the very beginning, you know, around carbon extraction, but fusion, the investment that we're making, and engineering plays such an important part in that as well, because we've proven that it works, you know, but it's engineering that's going to make it work. It's the R&D that's going to bring it alive. So we're very, very mindful of that, and we have to do it. We genuinely, I believe we are going to do it, but we genuinely have to. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you. Jim, as our climate expert, I'm going to come to you and see if there's anything you want to come back on that.
I'm delighted to hear all of this optimism, and I mean, when one looks at some of the science around climate change, it is extremely worrying. But on the other hand, I think I'm an optimist, and I think we need to approach it with that kind of attitude. It does require action across a whole spectrum of different areas of society and the economy. There are no silver bullets out there, but there's plenty of room for optimism. If we look at the way in which the cost of renewable energy has gone down, the cost of offshore wind, the cost of photovoltaics, now the cost of storage, then things are heading in the right direction. The automotive industry is tooling up for electrification. And I think what makes me most optimistic of all is the type of positive can-do attitude we see within industry, the engineering professions, and the government itself.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add before I go to some audience questions?
Just very quickly, I just wanted to really follow on from Jim's point. And, this conversation is incomplete without understanding the importance of empowering industry. I feel that, industry is where obviously a lot happens in terms of progressing innovation. And just as I said earlier, industry is ready to do some pretty spectacular stuff. And seeing better collaboration, even more doors open between industry and government, also recognizing emerging aspects to industry. So construction technology, for example, all of the industries and the companies and the SMEs that have come out of, UKRI projects, Innovate UK projects, really understanding how that work can become something even bigger than it currently is very, very crucial. I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Thank you. So we have a fair few questions. Some of them are more comments than questions. So maybe at the end I'll wrap up some of those so they can be fed back to the panel. But I want to start with a question from Sally Moores. UK research is first class. Most is then commercially exploited by foreign businesses. What strategy will change this to foster UK manufacturing? Now I'm opening it up to anyone who wants to jump in on that one. Jeremy, your hand's up.
Yeah, so I'll make an attempt. It's a big question to answer, of course, but the incentives the government offers, which are very helpful through UK Research and Innovation and Innovate UK and other interventions, could be more closely associated with keeping the technology in the UK. So there could be some linkage, which has been called sticky investment, so that companies stay around in the UK a little bit longer. I think we also need to look at critical national capability of the things we really need to have control of in supply chains in the UK. That work needs to be done across a range of sectors. And obviously that's impacted by both COVID and Brexit. And, we need to think about food, pharmaceuticals, engineering components, and so on. So I think critical national capability and sticky investment are my immediate thoughts on that.
Thank you. Amanda, do you have anything to add?
Yes, to agree with Jeremy, actually, and just sort of to reinforce that, I think one of the things, and I was also going to come in, sort of, Yewande made the point as well, really, it is around making sure that we support startups. It's around making sure as well that we support scale-ups. But I also want to make sure that we attract people to this country and keep people in this country as well. So that there's an awful lot, and I think I do believe that if we need to make sure that we keep that pool of talent here, I think we need to work collaboratively. I think we need to work globally. But I'm really, really keen to make sure that we're looking at things like information sharing more. I think that would be a fantastic thing. I think globally we should be information sharing. And just coming back, I think it was Jim's point earlier about being a science superpower. I acknowledge that in some areas we are, but I really, we absolutely just want to keep making sure that we are driving that and getting that message so that everybody acknowledges that we're a science superpower.
Thank you. So next question here is from Robin Sloan. Does the REF exercise, which I'm assuming is the research excellence exercise, help or hinder university engineering departments align with government priorities on innovation and spin out? Does anyone have anything? Oh, Amanda's got her hand up. I'll go to Amanda first, and then Jim, I'll come to you after.
I don't. So I missed the question. Sorry, was it the REF you were talking about?
Yeah, it was the REF.
Yeah, okay. So this is something that really is playing on my mind, and I'm certainly think we need to look at the measurement. I think it's served a purpose. I think that it's definitely going ahead as well. The next REF, but I think we need to sensibly have a look at this. And one of the things that I'm going to be starting over the next very shortly actually is looking at the REF. Is it fit for purpose? Is there something that maybe we should be either enhancing it or changing it in some way? So I think we need to really look honestly and sincerely, look at what it does at the minute and think about how we can do it better. I'll hand back to Jeremy or Jim.
Jim, you had your hand up, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm subject to the REF. I've coordinated our department's ref when I was in Newcastle, and as people will know, this next round of the ref is just drawing to a close, and I think it has become too big an exercise and too bureaucratic. The amount of energy that we academics are investing in the ref does detract from our day job, in particularly our day job now of teaching students under very difficult circumstances and trying to give them a really high quality education when we can do very little of that face to face. Nonetheless, I think the ref has been extremely useful in terms of focusing universities' minds on excellence. For our academic, we're judged on 3 criteria: significance, originality, and rigor. I use those criteria all the time when I'm talking to my graduate students. This is the standard we're held to, and I think it's the right standard. And at the same time, the ref over the last couple of cycles has really upped the focus on impact, on us demonstrating how our research has made a difference in the economy, in society. And I think it's done that in quite an intelligent way. It's not done it through a numbers game. It's done it through generating evidence-based narratives of how research, which could have been done 10 or 20 years ago, has made a difference. And I think that's really focused people's minds, and it has upped the amount of attention, the amount of credibility, the amount of reward which people within universities, including super academic ones like my own in Oxford, are paying to impact. So I think it would be a mistake to see that being taken away.
Thank you. So we've only got 5 minutes left, and then it's my job to wrap up. So what I'm going to quickly do is just summarize some of the comments that we've got in our Slido chat, and then put it back. So if all of our participants can think of just a sentence to summarize, and that's how we're going to finish it, because honestly, this has been such a diverse topic and such a diverse discussion that I'm really struggling to think about how I'm going to summarize it all at the end. So I'm asking you to do a bit of my job for me. But I'm just going to feed back some of these comments to you. So a few comments about whether the higher education system is fit for purpose and whether we need to revisit the journey to the professions. Should we be subsidizing STEM university and FE costs to nudge people into taking up FE STEM courses? Is the cost of engineering institution membership prohibitive? Should it be tax deductible? What about the aesthetics and different priorities of different carbon capture and wind turbines? And then yet more on university pathways for STEM careers. And how do we inspire and engage our future engineers with investment? So I'm just going to ask everyone really quickly, just a short sentence, kind of summarize where they think the way forward is now. And Yewande, I'm going to come to you first.
Thank you very much. I'm really, really happy to hear that people are thinking about STEM education. I have the incredible pleasure of being visiting professor at the University of Westminster and sitting on the council at the University of Warwick. And the fact that we are starting to rethink how we deliver STEM education, both at Warwick and at Westminster, we're rethinking the spaces that we deliver STEM education in as well, really reflects what is going on in our world today. It reflects the fact that people are learning differently. We're more aligned to industry than we've ever been. And I think that should be our mode of operating for this year and the years to come, without a doubt. Yeah, we definitely need to rethink it. In terms of institutions, yes, absolutely. Always about making everything that is on offer more inclusive.
Thank you. Hilary, going to come to you for a short one. Oh, you're on mute.
Not anymore. Sorry. So I think that now is the time to be really ambitious about what we're trying to achieve. I've been focusing on the skills agenda, but it goes much broader than that. And that means also being evidence informed. So drawing on current evidence of the policy levers and opportunities we have, and still being experimental in testing new ambitious ideas. I feel we've been quite UK focused in the conversation, and we're also talking about systems. We are within a global system. The challenges we are meeting are global. When we talk about being a superpower and making sure we can retain our skills, I think it needs to be in the context of a really well functioning global system.
Thank you. And Amanda, quickly to you.
Yes, I'm muted. Just build strong foundation. I just think we do need to be ambitious. We need to make sure that we afford opportunities for all in terms of diversity, and act responsibility, just to make sure that we secure our future for ourselves and for future generations.
Thank you. And Jim?
Yeah, I'm really pleased. We're unfortunately in the midst of a crisis, but I think it's led to some reflection in terms of where we should be going as a society, including the role of engineering within that. We've talked about the central role of engineering in our net zero commitments, and I think that's really positive. One of the things which has always disturbed me a bit is how many of our best graduates seem to end up in the finance sector and in the banks, and actually engineering provides long-term opportunity to really make a difference, and I can see that coming up in the agenda in an encouraging way.
Thank you. And last but not least, Jeremy?
Thank you. I'll be very quick because I know we're running out of time. So I think we need coherence and collaboration between government and the private sector to address the 2050 challenge, I think, in a more effective and coordinated way. And concerning PEI registration, I think we need to make sure that professional engineering registration, that's chartered engineer status, could be tax deductible. That would be really good. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us today, and thank you to our wonderful panellists. I found it really informative, and I hope you all have too. Have a great rest of your Tory conference.